As usual, this thing is in the way. All right. So we're here. This is CNIT 50. This is the last class meeting, well, this is the last time I'll cover any topic from the online course because we'll finish it up. There's not very much to it. And I was going to have a module that you turned in here, but I decided not to bother because you can't do it if your free trial has expired, and yours are probably expired by now. It's not that important anyway. What I want to do is instead just do this thing we did a couple weeks or so ago in the extra credit event where you just set up Splunk in the cloud. And so that's what I'm planning to do. That's now, I turned it in an extra credit project you can do for this class. I know a couple of you already did it in the 2-hour-long competition, and you should have got points for that. But anyway, it's a good idea to practice things which go beyond this course. This course has only talked about how to use Splunk, but not how to set it up, except in the most basic way. And here you set up a Drupal target and Splunk and Suricata to monitor it, and then send in some attacks and detect them. So it's good practice for really using Splunk, although it goes somewhat beyond the certification part of this class. Anyway, are there any questions? What's up with you?
Remember this form I had you fill out for me?
Only vaguely? Yeah.
Yeah, about a week ago, right? Well,
yeah.
The dean said we had too many errors and I had to redo it. So I redid it and I need your signature.
Okay, I can sign anything. That's good. Yeah. Good.
And I need for you to initial. Your initial.
Okay.
There, and there, and there.
Okay.
And date.
I have no idea what the date is.
Today is the 6th.
Okay.
April 6th.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. Processor. That is it.
Okay, good. I hope it works out.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Anyway. All right. Good. And let's see if there's anything coming in from the people online. Not obviously. All right. Then I'm just going to talk about the last module, which is very simple. And then I'll talk about this extra credit project, which you may want to do right now or you may want to do later. But it worked out pretty well as a competition. And I think it's good to put it all together. And next week, so this is the, let's see, there's a chat message coming in. Good afternoon. All right. There may be more coming. Anyway, so next week I'll have another competition, which will be a live competition. I probably can't do boss of the NOC, but I'll have something. Sort of like what this extra credit one is, where you're using a cloud machine and detecting attacks with Splunk. Let's see what this is. I am here, all right. In any case, all right, so let's start with the last module, which is a simple enough thing. 50 and Splunk collect. All right. So those were lookups, which you already did. And there we are, scheduled reports and alerts. All right. So you can take any report and you can make it run on an automatic basis. So it's not really a big deal. It can make a dashboard showing it or can send it off by email. So you make a search for something like this, fail equals root, for example, and then you save it as a report. Give it a title. One trick is you cannot have a time range picker on a scheduled report because it runs only at certain times and only refers to certain time ranges, and the end user cannot modify that, which is kind of logical. Then you can schedule it, and this is just like every other system. Microsoft has a task scheduling wizard. Linux has Cron, and you can choose various choices, including a Cron schedule where you can specify a string to specify any time range you like, any time to run it you like. Now, the time range is another issue, but you have to set it once and you can't change it. And this will typically be some period related to the time you run the report, like the last week for a weekly report or something like that. Then you have a time frame to run it. You can run it at certain times, every 5 minutes or whatever you like. And then it can do something. just like Microsoft scheduled tasks. You can create a log entry, send the result to telemetry. If you are sending information back to Splunk, this is like the thing that Microsoft started in Windows XP, where you keep sending error reports back to Microsoft. And this is the thing that has led to many scandals on cell phones, as a whole. Some company called Connect or something, and several others were found to be tracking everything you do on your cell phone. The companies all say they're doing this just to keep the performance of the system up, but everybody got upset because your data is going back to the cell phone provider and they don't tell you. This is true of almost everything. Tracking cookies, almost everything you do is constantly being monitored by third parties all the time. And the privacy advocates are always very worried about it. It is certainly the case that everything you do is being sent back home. You can turn this off if you like in Splunk, but in general, everything you do on the internet or on the telephone network for that matter is being sent back to providers who are monitoring it to maintain quality of service, and it is legal for ISPs and other companies to monitor what you do for purposes of keeping service quality up, but they are not supposed to be invading your privacy, and they're not supposed to be just handing it over to the government, although they absolutely do, and have been caught many times just handing it over. I think the latest one I saw this week was a DNA testing company that's been handing all the DNA evidence over to the police, and now they have decided to call this a feature and tell everybody we're the best company because we're more patriotic, and if you join us, we're going to hand your data to the FBI, and that makes us better, which may appeal to a certain demographic. It will also drive away another demographic, but it's sort of nice if they're honest about it instead of just doing it and not telling you. So you can send emails if you want regular emails coming out reporting things. And you can change permissions to decide who is allowed to run this and who is allowed to modify it and such, of course, just like everything else. You determine which profile is used to run it and who owns it and who's allowed to use it. Same as any other part of it. You can embed it in a web page, so people can view a web page, and that web page will have a little frame that includes the results of the latest Splunk report, which would be good for something like management that wants to see sales this week on some web page or something. All right, and then there's alerts. Alerts are just searches that do that and then create these events. And the point here, of course, is you might want to be alerted about something like an attack in progress or some other event that matters. So you run a search, you save it as an alert, and then you can choose whether you want to have it private or shared in an app where everybody can see it. And you can then have run scheduled alerts, which I would think are by far the better thing to do, where it only runs the query on some periodic schedule. A real-time alert will constantly run that query in the background, which seems to me like that would be an enormous resource hog. It seems to me that the Splunk developers and the Splunk management imagine that Splunk can handle a lot more queries per second than it can. I mean, one thing about the Splunk CTF projects I've given you is I put up a server running it, and I just made my own scoring engine. The original one that Splunk runs at Boss of the NOC and Boss of the SOC uses Splunk as the scoring engine, and it seems to me to be like using a sledgehammer to pound a nail. It's a big, complicated thing. It's doing a lot of work, and they keep on having to have big, fancy machines to run it because these, some kind of real-time updates in Splunk just doesn't seem so logical to me. Anyway, but it does have that option. I just think that would be awfully expensive, constantly running queries. And so you can choose how often it happens. I would think even if you're running an attack, I would only check every 5 minutes to see if the attack is happening or something. Anyway, you can choose a time range that triggers the alert. And then you have the other issue, of course, which is that if you have something going on like a brute force attack or denial of service attack, it will keep triggering over and over and over, and you'll get 1,000 emails. So you might want to limit it to not keep telling you the same thing over and over and over. So you can trigger it every time the certain thing happens, or after a certain number of those things have happened in a period of time, or after a certain number of your hosts have seen it, or a certain number of sources have seen it. These are all good things to have. And then you can have an option to get rid of repeated ones. So that's throttle. You can just tell me once per 5 minutes or once per hour if this is happening. Don't keep sending it to me every time another 5 have been detected or something. So that would seem like a good idea. I was just contacted by the people I'm going to teach in Texas in a month or two. I'm teaching a work class there, and they were just telling me they wanted to move my class to a special isolated room they prepared that's much smaller, because the previous instructor last summer ran an ethical hacking class, and he ran Nessus scans on the network. And he set off all their detection system and froze up the campus network and freaked everybody out. They said, are you going to do something like that? And I said, well, no, because I already did that like 10 years ago here. A student came in the summer, my ethical hacking class, he brought in the Aquanetric scanner, and he said, let's run this scanner. And I said, sure, that'll be great. And I got permission from the college to scan the network. He said, are you going to send a lot of traffic? I said, oh, no, we'll just do some tests by hand. You probably won't even notice, because I didn't know how noisy those things were. And I found out those scanners are horrible. They will send thousands of requests per second for 24 hours. They will go to every field on the page and send like 100 different strings in every field over and over and over. So it found one 1997 era Postman server where you could subscribe to a mailing list with some old Unix system. And it had about 20 fields on the form, and every field was totally unfiltered, subject to cross-site scripting and apparently SQL injection and everything else. So it sent 10,000 reports to the administrator's inbox of attack in progress. And it turned out that the network administrator had not warned the staff here at all. He said, oh, I'll test my staff. I'll see if they notice. So they noticed and freaked out and disconnected. They were being attacked by the hacking lab. They disconnected the hacking lab from the internet. And, there's a lot of people around here that would sort of like to see me take a hike. And I think this is one of the many things that leads to that anyway. So don't do that. If you run those Vuln scanners, you've got to run them in like an isolated network on a virtual machine copy. They are really, really noisy. And if you have any kind of network security, you'll totally freak out the staff. So you don't want to be doing this to somebody else's server over the internet or anything, without considering carefully and making sure they understand what you're doing. You don't just imagine they're not going to interfere with business, because they really are. Anyway, so you can set your throttle options to only return a certain number of events in any time window. And here's the trigger options that happen: send a script, send an email, and there's webhook, where it will do a web request. So this is the general catch-all. So you can send a web request to an API server or whatever other service you might have, so it can interact with other things. All right, and there's information, of course, about what you put in the log, what you call the event, what you call the source, and so on. So you can specify just how you want that log entry to look. And here's what happens if you send email, or these automatic emails. I know I got a bunch of Fortinet firewalls, and by default, they send you an email every day telling you about the number of attacks they've detected, which is kind of annoying, but anyway, that's the default behavior. So you can view these alerts, and you can edit them, of course. They're just queries essentially like any other, and you have the usual permissions to control them. So that's all. And there's another class after this. I looked into it, and the rest looked kind of dull. I wasn't inclined to get the certification. I should mention, by the way, that if you get the real certification, you'll get an A. I highly recommend doing it. It's $100. It's a 1-hour test. I think there's 50 questions. It's quite simple. It's like maybe half as tough as like one of the A+ tests. And I recommend it. This is a good thing to put on your resume, I would think. Anyway.
Can you guys pay for it, like City College?
I don't think there's any way to pay for it around here. You could try emailing Steve Nelson. At one time, he had some money to pay for certification exams. And I haven't asked him about this one. He might. But in general, getting money out of the college is far more trouble than it's worth. It's
how much is it?
$100, which is really very cheap for certification exams. But anyway, if you do want to email Steve Nelson, snelson@ccsf.edu. At one time, he supposedly had a budget to pay for some cert exams, and he might possibly have some left. I hadn't thought of that, but it would be good. I've had some cert exams that are so relaxed I can actually give it as a final exam in class. That would be awesome, but these guys won't let me do that. That's a pretty unprofessional thing to do, of course, because I could totally be cheating. How do they know? So only your sort of low-end search would let you do that. The rest make you go to a testing center. Anyway, but I will have a competition next week. And now I want to talk about the thing you got to do this week, which a couple of you did last week, but I think my Splunk students should do it. Are my notes for this module on the site? Well, I'm just using the official Splunk stuff, so you got it when you signed up for the online course. It's in the PDF. And if somehow you don't have it, then you can get it here where I posted my stuff, the archived class material. But you will have to email next week I don't understand. Anyways, so you can get it here, and if you need a name and password, email my grader for it. I don't want to put it in the video because I don't want Splunk getting mad at me for handing out these supposedly non-distributable things. Now, what's this? Next week or on the 27th?
You said the next class was next week.
Oh, the next class. Oh, did I say it was next week? Oh, God, you should have. On the 27th is when we'll have that. Yes. And then there'll be an online final exam. So this will be the last official class meeting for this class, and it is extra credit. You do not have to attend, but it will be a live competition, and it should be fun. All right. Good. Any other questions? Now, let me talk about this thing, which I've just cleaned up a little bit and added my own scoring engine, which is less pretty than the CAS's because I don't have access to CAS's. But this thing can now be done as a homework assignment. I should just mention a few caveats. So what you're going to do here is create a whoa, what is this nonsense? Okay, good. Create a few cloud servers, and why are the pictures missing? They were there earlier. What happened here? Right. Oh, they're coming. Okay, they're just loading slowly, I guess. All right. Let me see if I can deduce what the problem is. I'm going to try moving to the staff network and see if that helps any. Right. Well, all right, could be some pictures are actually missing. Let me, just a moment, I'm going to try and fix that because that's very annoying. This is in 140 proj, and the missing pictures are these cloud things. Just let me see. Yeah, okay, GCL, okay. If I sort them by name, there's the GCLs. All right. Let me throw these up to my server so as to make it less annoying. All right, let's see if that does it. Right. You're lying. Oh, I remember this. My server has some, okay. If you use Cloudflare, my server has some caching and Cloudflare has more caching. So if you use Cloudflare, which protects you from attacks, it also makes your site load quickly, but it does that by caching. And if you want to get fast response, you have to do this and turn on development mode, which I have to do very often. And I would, there. And the other thing I found is that my browser also caches it. And there is a way to supposedly reload the browser and not use the cache, but it never seems to work in any browsers. They all just cache stuff. And see, the page images are there, but the browser Firefox will not let go. And even shift refresh does not stop them. So anyway, all right, so you make cloud servers. These are Google Cloud servers. They're free if you have a credit card. You get $300 worth of free cloud service, and you should definitely learn how to use cloud servers. This is far more valuable than learning how to use VMware or VirtualBox on a local machine, because those are just toys essentially used for training. Nobody uses them in the real world for anything. What everybody really uses is cloud servers. Every web server you talk to on the web, all your email and everything is all going through cloud servers, and everybody should be learning how to use them. So you just sign up for an account, you give it a credit card, but they won't charge you anything. They'll give you $300 of free service, and then they'll warn you before they want to charge you anything. And then you can just create VM instances here. So you can create a lot of virtual machines here, and we're going to make one Debian Linux and one Ubuntu Linux for no particularly good reason. Any version of any operating system would do for these. Those are just the ones that I chose because I'm familiar with them. So the default is a Debian machine. You make a Debian machine, and we're going to use that as the attacker, and we're going to use the Ubuntu as the target. So you make a Debian machine here, which is going to be used like Kali to attack this, and then you run Ubuntu on this one. I just used the latest LTS version of Ubuntu. Ubuntu has a new version every 6 months, but you should only use the ones that are even number .04 unless you really are planning to update every 6 months, because they're all essentially betas, except the one every 2 years, which is the long-term support version, and it's supported for 5 years. So unless you really need the cutting edge features, it's better to stick to the LTS versions, which come out every 2 years. And 1804 is the latest LTS version. I saw a cat message. Okay, Google Cloud is the same. Yes, Google Cloud is Google's competitor to Amazon Web Services. There are 3 major cloud platforms. Amazon was the first, and they're the biggest. And after that comes Azure and Google, that are sort of tied for number 2 and number 3. And they both rising quickly. For a while, I always thought we should just teach Amazon and nothing else because they're the king, but that is not really true. I looked at percentages. It's more like 40 and 30 and 30 percentages. So it's not bad, but Amazon is the main one and the most mature. The only thing is Google is the easiest to get free service on. All you need is a Gmail account, and it seems to be that you can just make a new Gmail account and use the same credit card again. I'm pretty sure I did that, which is hard to believe. I thought I'd at least need a different credit card, but they seem to just give you $300 for every Gmail account you make, so you can keep doing this over and over as much as you want to, which is very nice. Amazon is much more bureaucratic and picky about who they give free service to. They will give you 1 year free to anybody, but after that, it's hard to get free service. So once you're in, you just execute a command here to get something to show that you've got the Debian server running. And instead of putting forms to fill in right here, like I did in some of the other projects, I've separated the instructions from submitting flags, just because there's a different scoring server that I'm using sometimes. So you'll find flags here, and to put the flags in, you just put them here. So here's a scoring engine, and here's the scoreboard. So this is more like the way CTF competitions do it. Here's where you can put in flags. And when you're done, you get scoreboard scores here. No students have scores. There's just test scores for me, which I can show by adding a parameter here. There, I've tested it to make sure. So you can get up to, looks like I forgot to answer question 2 or something, but anyway, you should be able to get 35 points. Looks like I forgot to answer 1 or something went wrong. I'll check that later. Anyway, so that's the point. So you create these servers, and then you install Drupal on one of them. Drupal is a content management system. Now here comes another caveat. When I went this morning to check my cloud servers, Google had taken my server down. They said, your server has violated our terms of service. It was mining cryptocurrency. And then it occurs to me, I'm installing a Drupal that's like 4 years out of date that is vulnerable to like 3 known remote execution vulnerabilities. So of course it got hacked. So if you don't want to have Google get sore at you and turn off your server, then turn off your server at the end of the project and only turn it on again if you want to use it for a later project. If you leave it going for a couple of weeks, it will be detected by an automatic scanner and exploited by a known attack. So I should probably modify this project to do something like move it to a private network or something so that doesn't happen. The way it is now, it's a honeypot, which is actually possibly interesting. And I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do, but I might do that. So if you go to Compute Engines here are my servers. And as you see, here's the new one I made this morning. Here's the old one that they took down. This instance is stopped. They've detected suspicious activity. If you run a seriously vulnerable machine on the internet, it will of course get hacked pretty soon if there's just a standard attack. And the point of this is we're installing a really old version of Drupal, which is one of the major content management systems. And it is vulnerable to a lot of interesting attacks, which I'm planning to use in the next couple of contests. Anyway, so I appreciate the fact that they didn't like actually cancel my account and punish me or something. They just turned off the server. So apparently it didn't do anything too bad. I've had several servers turned off for getting hacked because I'm putting up deliberately vulnerable stuff. In the other ones I've done, I would run scripts to limit the upstream bandwidth so they can't do much harm. And then they can get hacked and you can examine the attack, but they don't turn it off because it doesn't do enough harm to set off their alarms. If you're interested, the command to handle that is in Linux TC for throttle connection. You can use TC to limit your bandwidth. So you can limit it so it can only talk to the world at like 100 megs per second. And then even if it gets infected and starts doing a DDoS, it's so slow that it doesn't trigger all the alerts and nobody cares. That's what you should do for honeypots. And I have some old projects on my page about honeypots I set up that way. Now I've accidentally made a honeypot. My machine has been hacked. And so that's why I didn't delete it yet. I could start it up and go in and see what they did to it. But it's just going to be an automated process using this attack. Anyway, in this case, we're not even going to use those Drupal attacks. These commands will install MySQL, PHP, and Drupal, and it goes to a repository and gets a really old version of Drupal. This is intentional, so it's vulnerable to various attacks that I'm planning to use in future projects. And then you install a virtual host here for Apache, and now you will see Drupal. Drupal looks like this. It is a competitor to WordPress. It has a graphical installation page that just sits on the web. And you can then step through the steps and create sort of a blog here with a username and password. And then people that don't know any coding can put up a pretty web page because you just drag and drop pictures in and put in text, sort of like Microsoft Word. And that's why people love these things. It's easy for non-technical people who are in things like marketing and management to make pretty looking things like they would in Microsoft Word. So then you put Splunk on here, which you've already done in module 3 or so, but here we do it again. So you have to go to Splunk and log into your account in order to get the download link. There is a wget link to put it on Debian systems, which will be available if you go to the Linux version, and it has a long URL in it. That's what you can use to directly download Splunk onto a Debian server and run it. And this will be, I think it'll be a trial version, a 30-day trial, the enterprise version. All right, so you just run that wget with that long link and then install it, and it will install Splunk. Now what this does is just download a deb file. Deb file is a Debian package file. These are the Linux equivalents of MSI installer files for Windows. So once you have a deb package, you use dpkg-i to install it. That's how it works. And once you're on, it will start listening on port 8000. Now, this is another caveat I put at the top that my students hit in the competition. City College blocks outgoing traffic to port 8000. They filter the network pretty extensively here. So you won't be able to connect to your Splunk server if you go through the City College network. So you'll have to use a hotspot on your phone or the danger zone network that we've set up in a couple labs or a coffee house or something to do it. One thing that I would like to do, and I just haven't had time yet, back up here, we configured Apache to hand out the, this Apache configuration page, set up a virtual host. And I should be able to set up an Apache rewrite rule that will serve up the stuff on port 8000 on port 80 at a different URL. It really should just be a matter of adding 8 or 10 more lines to this. I just need to Google how to do it and get it straight. We should be able to serve up the Splunk page right on the same port 80 expected, but I haven't quite figured it out yet. I'll improve this project when I get there so it can work on the City College network. Anyway, so now you have set up something. You've got Splunk to use, and you've got Drupal running on Linux server. So now you have something that can record some log entries. Now you have to choose your log standard. So I'm going to put in data with files and directories, and this is something we did not do in this class, which is why I really thought I should throw it in this Splunk class, is monitor a real live server. All we did is look at archive data here. And remember, we said right in the beginning that archive data is not what people really look at. What they really look at is live data. So we're just going to var log in general. In Linux systems, all the logs are in the var log directory. So if you just index everything in the var log directory, you should be getting all the logs. That's the idea. So you index that. And all right. That looks like the wrong picture. I'll have to check that out. Anyway, so now, all right, you can now allow password authentication on your server. By default, it allows only certificate authentication. And in this project, I connect through the Google homepage, which connects right there. And that's using certificate authentication, not password authentication. But if you allow password authentication, you can now create a very simple attack where you just try to log in several times with a password that doesn't work. That's one simple form of attack. And so you should be able to see those events. So if you do a search in Splunk, you can search on your machine and you will find events here, authentication failures. And that would be the first thing. You're just looking at the normal system logs. This is the auth log, which records attempts to log in. And you can see what it looks like in Splunk when people are doing a brute force attack, trying to log in over and failing to get in. All right, so, but for more precision, and you certainly saw this if you've been doing the Boss of the Knot projects, we're going to put on Suricata. Suricata is an IDS. And again, it's open source, so all you have to do is execute a few commands, and it will put in Suricata. Now you can put in this alert, which will detect possible DDoS attacks for a custom rule, and then start Suricata, monitor the log, and now if you go to your attack server and use the hping3 command, the hping3 command is just a simple command line tool that sends specified traffic, and it can send a series of pings to the server. These are going to be TCP connections on port 80. This will just send a packet flood. This is a SYN flood, a very simple denial of service attack. This is the original basic one. You send SYN packets which begin a TCP connection, and you never complete the connection. On old servers, this occupies a lot of RAM because every connection requires a lot of memory to remember waiting for the rest of it. And this is a very harmless SYN flood with only 20 packets, not enough to bring anything down, but enough to be detected by that rule. So it'll send 20 packets in a second or two, and then you'll see possible DDoS attack being detected on the server if everything's working. So that just means that your suricata is installed correctly and running. Now, to get real value out of suricata, you don't just have a rule to pick up a silly thing like that. You have a whole bunch of community rules that are generated by maintained by the developers of suricata and the customers. And so you do that with suricata update. Suricata update will download all the rules, the recommended rules, and you can configure it to use all the new rules. And now it will have a big list of possible attacks, just like an antivirus engine, and detect all these attacks coming in. And now you can view all these suricata alerts, which will look somewhat familiar. Like I say, if you've been doing the extra credit boss of the NOC, because they use suricata on that machine. And so you'll be getting the same thing here. And then you can perform another flood attack, and you'll get more log entries because it'll be the real suricata rules detecting it. And my plan is, in future ones like this, which I'm doing on Saturday afternoons, when this class does not meet, I've been doing this purple or red versus blue contest, and we're practicing these things, and people are competing to do them quickly and accurately. So we'll be, now that we've got this vulnerable server, we'll be attacking it with various more fancy attacks, like all the Drupal attacks that they hack my server with. Those are typically called Drupal-geddon. There's Drupal-geddon 1, 2, and 3 out now, 3 remote code executions, and we should be able to detect them all with suricata and Splunk and get the mark, and then we should be able to block them all. So anyway, that's where I'm at, and so that is something to do, which I highly recommend, although if all you care about is getting a certification, this all goes beyond the certification. But this is what you'd really have to do to really set up Splunk and use it. And I think we should all be practicing how to actually get it going, Splunk and suricata and such. Are there any questions? Well, I'm just gonna stop the share and I'll go to the lab. And if anybody wants to work on these things today, I can help you, but I'm just gonna leave them up. There's a scoring engine and you can just turn in a picture of the scoring engine showing how many points you got if you want to get extra credit for doing that extra project. Is it safe to do this over a home connection? Yes, it is. This can't hurt you at all because we're doing it all in the cloud. The only thing that will happen is you're setting up a vulnerable server in the cloud and then attacking it from another server in the cloud. And the worst thing that would happen is if you forget to turn off your machine, it'll get hacked and Google will turn it off. So as far as I know, the only thing that might happen is if enough students do this and they all leave it up there and get hacked, probably Google will eventually send me an email and say, all right, knock it off. Why are you making people put all these vulnerable machines on our server? So please turn it off. At some point, Google might get mad at me. That's probably all that would happen. If anything bad happens to you, just blame it on me. So yeah.
So Google gives us $300 to do it as we wish. How much would it cost to run like let's just say like a password cracking farm?
Well, that's a very good question, and I don't know. They detected that my machine was doing cryptocurrency mining. I think what they do is they notice if it's at 100% CPU all the time. It's a very good question. I don't know what would happen if you tried to do a real productive activity of some kind and use up all that time. I would think you could do it, but maybe you'd have to alert them. So I wonder how they caught me. You know, I wonder, this actually, in the realm of privacy, I wonder how much they know about what my cloud server is doing. I wonder if they can just log in and see what process is running and tell what it is. I think they technically can, and probably they do. There was probably a terms of service I didn't read that probably says they can examine my server at any time. But then what would happen if I wanted to put like private customer data on it? It's an interesting issue, and I don't know the answer. Yeah.
Well, if you have a firewall and you're sending and the data is going out to a known malicious site,
yeah,
IP, then that's
they could be doing that, but what they busted before was cryptocurrency mining. So the malware that took over my site did not send out traffic. It was just doing cryptocurrency mining, apparently. But I guess that's sending out visible traffic too to the monitor. Okay, they might have done it from the outside. They might have looked inside my machine, and that's actually, you know, it's an interesting issue, and it gets you in that whole complicated world of exactly how much monitoring should people be doing, and how much privacy should you be expecting. There's no simple answers. Yeah.
Is it possible to download the Google Cloud image down to our VirtualBox or VMware to run it?
That's a very good question. I know you can do that with Amazon. If you run vSphere locally, you can push images up And I think you can also pull them down from the cloud, although I'm not sure. In fact, I'm not even sure if that's possible in Amazon. I know if you use Amazon command line commands, what you're supposed to do, here's the normal way you use the cloud. You have a local server, you run vSphere on it, you get your cloud working, and then you push the image up to the server. Pulling the image down, I've heard this used to not be supported because it was too much bandwidth. Even if, like, for example, if you wanted to back up a server, or if I wanted to do a forensic image of this hacked server, then a couple of years ago, what I was told is you have to pay money and they will put it on a hard disk and mail it to you. I don't know if you can download it now because it's not really that big. It's a good question, and I don't know the answer. I imagine you can probably make an image. I know on my DigitalOcean cloud server, I can make a backup. But I haven't tried to download that backup, but I think I could. I really don't think there's a problem. You can make a backup file. It's just a hard disk image. It's really not that big, I suppose. Well, you know, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. I think there's not much demand for that. The main demand is the other way, pushing up images. And I should mention something that a visitor told us last semester. He said, if you're using the cloud, if you log into a machine and you type commands in the machine, you're wrong. You should never do that. What you should do is you should make your cloud machine so that when you restart it, everything automatically starts. And if you want to change anything about your cloud machine, you should make a new image and push up a whole new image. You should never be executing any commands in a cloud machine. That's for amateurs. Because the whole point of the cloud is you want to push up one server, and then if you get a lot of traffic, you'll just clone it and have 10 or 100 servers. And this is the way you keep control. You just have a version, and whatever you want to do, go to the next version and push up a new version. That is the way to maintain everything and make it really work. And I think that's very good advice. I don't live up to it because I am kind of an amateur. I'm only running a few cloud servers, and they're all one-offs, and a lot of them are vulnerable. That's the only thing I do in the way of proper management is I make backups because there are some students that hack my servers really badly, who shall remain nameless. And so it's good to have backups in case they like cover it with dancing teddy bears or something, and I have to clean it up. Anyway, speaking of which, in case you people didn't notice, Caitlin's done an excellent job hacking my servers lately, so I'm going to bring those up. And our visiting speaker applauded this as the proper way to demonstrate your skills. So she hacked my Hackathon server and put her name on it and put kittens everywhere instead of all the products. So everything is now kittens. So I thought that was pretty good. And the other one was my attack server. Yes, everything is kittens. And if I can get to my attack server, here, attack server. Okay. Yeah, my attack server has been turned into like a GeoCities wonderland with dancing kittens and all sorts of things, dancing babies, and this is how I feel when hackers change my. Oh, this is pretty good. You know? So I left it that way for a while because you didn't actually break it. You can still get to this stuff, I suppose. Yeah. So or maybe I'll just leave it that way. I don't know. Anyway, it makes a statement. So it's worth extra credit to hack me, although this one is so easy to hack, you don't get extra credit. The other one, I gave her extra credit for that. But I mean, that's pretty good. Yeah. If you can hack my main page, this one, then you'll really get extra points. Only a couple of people have ever done that. And this one is not intentionally vulnerable. You're not supposed to be able to get root on this one. If you do, that's worth plenty of points. Go for it. If you want to hack any of my stuff, go to there's a disclosure policy. There's the rules. I cannot, the only important part of the disclosure policy is don't go hacking the college or something. I don't have the authority to allow you to hack the college. But as far as my stuff, it's all fair game. Although I would appreciate it if you don't take stuff down like when students need it for homework. But you know, I can understand that. Anyway, but that's very good. This is what everybody should do. Everybody should be opting out of the legal protection. This is hard to explain to management, but the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act protects you by making it illegal for anybody to do anything unauthorized on your server. And what that means is the bad guys just hack you anyway because they don't care, and the good guys can't tell you about the vulnerabilities they find because they'd be confessing to a crime. So the result of the law is to make you more vulnerable. Management has a hard time understanding this. But if you want to actually be secure, what you ought to do is put up a statement like this and voluntarily opt out of the legal protection, because the legal protection is not helping you. However, this is a hard sell to management, although it's a little easier now that the Department of Defense had a couple of bug bounties But there's a lot of institutes, like as far as I can tell, all the major banks still believe that you can't do this. This would be like inviting people to hack us. That would create more attacks. And what it does is create a bunch of amateurish attacks from white hat hackers trying to find vulnerabilities. It doesn't create serious attacks that are going to hurt you. The serious attacks are coming in from real attackers who couldn't care less about the law. Anyway, but so I opted out, and I recommend that you opt out. But if you try to tell your management that, be very gentle, because they might just decide that you're a lunatic. This is a general problem in the world of security. If you tell people the truth, they often don't want to hear it. And so it's a social issue, how to communicate an unpleasant thing to someone without them blaming you and deciding the easy solution here is just get rid of you, and then I don't have to hear this unpleasant stuff anymore. Anyway, any questions? All right, I'm going to stop this thing and go to the lab. And if anybody wants to work on any of these projects, I'll be there for a while to help you. All right. Good.